Shalom Aleichem. I am coming to you with another reading in the Torah, in the Chumash. We are in the second reading of Vayetzei, in the book of Breshis. All right, let us begin. I am reading from, again, my Hebrew-English Chitas. All right, so let us begin. The second reading. And it is up here. Torah is up here. Rashi is down here. All right, let us begin. Starting with chapter 29, verse 1. Light of foot, Jacob set out for the land of the people of the east. Verse 1. Rashi, Jacob raised his feet. When he received the good news that he was promised God's protection, his heart lifted his feet, and it became easy for him to walk. So it is explained in Breshis Rabbah. Verse 2, Torah. When he reached Aram Naharaim, he looked, and there before his eyes was a well in a field, and 3 flocks were lying there beside it, for the local shepherds watered the flocks from that well. The boulder covering the opening of the well was huge. Verse 2, Rashi. They watered the flocks. The shepherds would water the flocks, but the verse speaks in an abbreviated way without mentioning the subject. Verse 3, Torah. Every day when all the flocks were gathered there, the shepherds would together roll the boulder off the opening of the well and water the flocks, and then replace the boulder over the opening of the well. Verse 3, Rashi. They were gathered means they would usually be gathered because the stone was huge and required several shepherds to remove it. This means they would roll, and therefore Onkelos translates it as here they would roll off. A continuous present tense. Any continuous present tense may be expressed interchangeably by a future form or a past form, as here, since anything that occurs continuously already happened and will happen again in the future. Onkelos translate it as, and they would replace. Verse 4, Torah. Jacob asked them, "My brothers, where are you from?" And they replied, "We are from Haran." He asked them, "Do you know Laban, the grandson of Nahor?" And they replied, "We know him." He asked them, "Is he well?" And they replied, "He is well, and here is his daughter Rachel approaching with the flocks." Verse 6, Rashi, approaching with the flocks. The accent on this word is on the aleph, and therefore its alliteration, the accent on this word is on the aleph, and therefore its translation, meaning she is coming, however, has the accent of the first syllable on the base, and therefore its translation is there, as she came. The former means she is doing, present tense, and the latter means she did, past tense. Verse 7, Torah. He said to them, "It is still broad daylight. It is still not yet time to round up the livestock and take them home. If they need to drink, water the flocks and go off and pasture them." Verse 7, Rashi. It is still broad daylight. Since he saw the flocks crouching, he thought that they wished to gather in the livestock, and that they would no longer pasture that day. He therefore said to them, "The day is yet young," as if to say, if you are day laborers, you have not completed the day's work, and if the animals are yours, nonetheless, it is not yet time to round up the livestock. Breshis Rabbah. Verse 8, Torah. They replied, "We cannot water the flocks until all the flocks are rounded up and all the shepherds can roll the boulder off the opening of the well together. Only then can we water the animals." Verse 8, Rashi. We cannot water them because the stone is too big. This is translated by Onkelos as here, and they will roll, because here it is in the future tense. Verse 9, Torah. He was still speaking with them when Rachel arrived with her father's flock, for she was a shepherdess. When Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and the flocks of Laban, his mother's brother, Jacob stepped forward and rolled the boulder off the opening of the well and watered the flocks of Laban, his mother's brother. Verse 10, Rashi. Jacob stepped forward and rolled as effortlessly as removing the stopper from a container. This is stated to let you know that his strength was great. Verse 11, Torah. Then Jacob kissed Rachel. He burst out crying. Verse 11, Rashi. He burst out crying because he foresaw through divine inspiration that she would not be buried with him. Another explanation. He cried because he came empty-handed. He said, Eliezer, my grandfather's servant, had with him nose rings, bracelets, and delicacies, but I have nothing with me. The reason for this was because Eliphaz, son of Esau, had pursued him and caught up with him, instructed by his father to kill him. However, since Eliphaz had grown up in Isaac's care, he refrained, not being able to kill him. Instead, he asked Jacob, "What shall I do about my father's command?" Jacob answered him, "Take whatever I have, for a poor person is considered dead." All right, verse 12, Torah. Jacob told Rachel that he was both her father's relative as well as Rebekah's son. She ran and told her father of Jacob's arrival. Verse 12, Rashi, that he was her father's literal brother, her father's relative, as in, for we are relatives. But the Midrashic explanation of the phrase is, if he intends to deceive me, I am also his brother, his equal, in deception. But if he is an upright person, I am also the son of his righteous sister, Rebekah, and told her father, because her mother had died, and she had no one to tell besides him. Verse 13, Torah. When Laban heard the news of the arrival of Jacob, his sister's son, he ran to greet him. He embraced him, kissed him, and brought him home. Jacob told Laban of all these events. Verse 13, Rashi. He ran to greet him. He thought, Jacob is laden with money, for even the servant of that house, Eliezer, arrived here with 10 laden camels. He embraced. When he saw nothing with him, he said, maybe he has brought gold coins, and they are hidden in his bosom. Kissed him. He said, maybe he has brought pearls, and they are hidden in his mouth. Jacob told Laban that he only came because he was forced to on account of his brother Esau, and that his money had been taken from him. Verse 14, Torah. Laban said to him, you are truly my own flesh and blood. Jacob stayed with him for a month and tended his flocks. Verse 14, Rashi. You are truly my own flesh and blood. Laban said, really, I have no reason to take you into my house, into my home, since you have nothing with you. However, since we are relatives, I will take care of you for a month. So he did, but even this was not for free, for Jacob tended his flocks. Verse 15, Torah. Laban then said to Jacob, just because you are my close relative does it mean that you must work? Does it mean that you must work for me for free? Tell me what your wages should be. All right, verse 15, Rashi. This is the introduction to a question. Just because you are my relative, should you work for me for free? This is the equivalent of, should you work for me? Similarly with any word in the past tense, when a vav is added at the beginning, it changes the word to the future tense. Verse 16, Torah. Now Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the older one was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah's eyes were tender, while Rachel was a woman of beautiful facial features and complexion. Verse 17, Rashi, tender. She was thought that she would fall to the lot of Esau, and she was therefore constantly weeping, for everyone was saying, Rebekah has 2 sons, and Laban has 2 daughters. The elder daughter is for the elder son, and the younger daughter is for the younger son. literally form. This refers to the form of the face, having the same root as he shapes it with a saw. A compass in Old French. Appearance, literally appearance. This refers to the complexion of her features. And that is the second reading of Vayetzei in the book of Bereshit. All right. Let us begin reading Wisdom of the Lubavitcher Rebbe on the Parshiot. We are in the second reading of Vayetzei. Second reading, Genesis chapter 39, verse 1 through 17. Jacob arrived at the well where the local shepherds gathered each day to water their flocks. Because the boulder covering the well was so heavy, the shepherds had to remove it together. But when Jacob's cousin Rachel arrived, shepherding her father Laban's flocks, Jacob removed the boulder by himself. The title of this wisdom is called Uniting Opposites. The shepherds would together roll the boulder off the opening of the well. The well represents our inner well springs of holiness. The boulder represents the materialism that often blocks these well springs, and the shepherds are our love and our fear of God. But just as one shepherd alone could not remove the boulder, we cannot unblock our wellspring with only love or only fear of God. This is because both love and fear of God can easily slip into unhealthy forms if we are not careful. An example of unhealthy love is the love of material indulgence. An example of unhealthy fear is acting harshly toward others. If, however, we both love and fear God, our fear of God can prevent us from falling into negative forms of love, and our love of God can protect us from falling into negative forms of fear. This is why the shepherds were able to remove the boulder from the well. Only when working together, Jacob, however, was able to remove the boulder by himself because he embodied both love and fear of God. And that is Wisdom on the Parshiot by the Lubavitcher Rebbe. All right, have a wonderful evening. Shavua Tov.